The state of North Carolina is more than twice as long as the distance between London and Paris. From soaring mountains through the foothills, the Piedmont coastal plains, to the pristine beaches, there are hundreds of towns and cities, each with unique stories to tell.
There's a place where you can love your neighbors, you love yourself, and everybody can get along.
Every North Carolina community has pride, and more than a few have real challenges.
The nearest grocery store is 20 miles away.
Main Street NC is a special series from the WUNC Politics podcast, telling the stories of communities across North Carolina in the words of the people who live there and reported by Capitol Bureau Chief Colin Campbell. Main Street NC, coming up after this.
Standing next to Spring Creek in the tiny mountain town of Hot Springs, it's hard to imagine a flood. The mountain creek is only a few inches deep, and many of the scars of Helene have faded from its banks. But in September 2024, Spring Creek carried massive amounts of water through downtown Hot Springs, about an hour north of Asheville near the Tennessee line. One of the hardest hit businesses was the resort and spa, known for its mineral baths that have drawn visitors for 200 years, an attraction that gave the town its name. General Manager Heather Hicks showed me around the property.
So we lost 3/4 of our mineral baths, 2/3 of our lodging, our entire hot water system. It was epic. Absolutely epic.
Yeah. The resort has been able to rebuild some of the cabanas and hot tubs where visitors bathe in the 102-degree natural spring water overlooking Spring Creek. But it's been a slow process, and the resort currently has 7 rooms of lodging where it once had 27.
And it's a big shift for town economically. You know, this is a town of less than 600 people. Prior to the storm, we brought in 70,000 people a year to Hot Springs to visit the waters. So we feel an incredible onus to the town itself. Our recovery is tied to the town's recovery. We are all in this together.
Yeah.
So giving people a place to stay overnight is really important. You know, if they come in and visit the baths and then go back to Asheville, that doesn't make the economic impact that's really needed for this town to get its legs back.
Mm-hmm. I asked Hicks if the resort has gotten any support from the state or federal government as it rebuilds.
Oh, absolutely not. There's been none of that. But what we do have is an incredibly strong community, an incredibly dedicated staff, and a brigade of volunteers who showed up to help. That's what has rebuilt us. There has been no insurance money. There has been no government money. There's been a lot of heart and dedication.
Yeah. It's a similar story when you talk to other business owners and local leaders in Hot Springs. State and federal money has been slow to arrive, but locals have been able to get things up and running with donations and volunteer labor. When I visited Hot Springs in December, Artisan Gallery and Cafe had just reopened in its original downtown space after operating from a temporary space for more than a year. Philip and Pasha Solomon own the shop that sells arts and crafts from local vendors, as well as coffee and pastries.
And it was a grueling effort for the building owners to get here. Mm-hmm. It was something that they had to go through a lot. And so there was that uncertainty that was like, is that even going to be possible? And just through their perseverance and dedication, we're able to be here today.
The reconstruction was a slow process because the floodwaters collapsed the floor inside the historic building. For the new Artisan, Philip Solomon got a local artist to build a replacement counter using materials from the elementary school gym floor, where donations poured in after the storm.
The reason that they had to redo the floor at the elementary school was because of all the donations that came in were so heavy on that floor, and there were some leaks of water and chemicals, and so that floor had to be taken out and redone. And so kids will come in here and say, hey, that's the gym floor. Yeah. and one kid said, I've got blood on that floor. And the other kid said, we've all got blood on that floor.
Everyone in Hot Springs seems to have put their blood, sweat, and tears into the recovery process. Many of them have volunteered through the nonprofit Rebuild Hot Springs, which has spearheaded the efforts to rebuild homes, businesses, and infrastructure. I met up with the group's leader over coffee at Artisan to hear more about what's been accomplished and what's still needed to get back to normal. TJ Phillips is the board president for Rebuild Hot Springs and has lived in the town since 2020. Thanks so much for speaking with me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and talking to me.
Yeah, so for folks who haven't been to Hot Springs since the storm, what was sort of the extent of the damage that this town experienced?
Well, I mean, for the most part, the downtown was just devastated. The thing I think a lot of people don't understand that made Hot Springs a little different than some areas along the French Broad River was that it wasn't just the French Broad River. You know, the French Broad River came up and there was extensive damage to homes along the river and the Hot Springs Resort and Spa. And it really came right up to the train tracks in town where all the rest of the businesses on the other side of those train tracks, Spring Creek had come up. And so for the downtown, it was really, Spring Creek. I mean, where we're sitting right now at Artisan, this was probably 8 feet of water in here. But from Spring Creek, not the French Broad River.
So sort of the unexpected of, well, it's not the larger body of water that caused all the problems.
Right. Yeah, so for folks who are familiar with town, it was, the bridge across the French Broad River was underwater, and all the way from there to, almost to where the Alpine Court and the Presbyterian Church had, that was sort of the edge of where there was damage to those properties, but that was sort of the edge of the high water mark in town. So that's the entire downtown.
Is there sort of numbers as far as the homes, businesses, et cetera, that either were damaged or destroyed in the storm?
Yeah, so for rebuild, our scope is more than just the downtown area. We also had, particularly the community of Spring Creek, which is part of Hot Springs, as you're heading further up 209 and further up Spring Creek. That area was also, a lot of homes damaged down through, a lot of sort of, not just the homes, but, private bridges and driveways, things like that. Without off the top of my head, I think there's somewhere in the ballpark of at least 40 homes and over 24 businesses for sure.
Yeah. So in the wake of the storm, how did you go from sort of the initial everybody doing what they can response to sort of formally coming together as the Rebuild Hot Springs organization?
Yeah. Well, so that was kind of a, I was. So I don't want to say brought in by accident, but I wasn't part of when I was brought to the initial forming meeting of the nonprofit. There were just a lot of folks from town that were sort of asked to be part of that initial meeting, and I was asked to be there because I was working on coming up with. I had seen my wife had organized the donation center that the town was running for sort of food and toiletries, that sort of things. And I was watching some of what I've heard called the disaster within the disaster of like, well, we've got enough diapers for this community for the next decade, but not enough other things that were important. So what I was trying to do just at that moment in time, this is still in those first few weeks after the storm. I think this was probably early October, still mid-October maybe, and I was trying to get my arms around the fact that at some point, hopefully the donations were going to shift from, okay, people are being fed, but there's a lot that needs to be rebuilt with the homes and the residences. So I was trying to put together this sort of building materials list so that we didn't end up with enough drywall for all of Western North Carolina and not a single piece of plywood or something, right? So, my thought in going into that first meeting was like, oh, great, this is getting formally organized. And so, I have this list, at least what it looked like on that day, because it changed every single day. So if there's money coming in, great. Like I'll be able to come up with here's the price tag for what all the materials for all the getting everything rebuilt is going to look like. And at least that was the thought at the time, right? And so as that kind of came together, I got asked to be on the board, and then got asked to be where I am now and as a president on that board. But the whole group has been amazing. I think that's the story of the flood. I think here is like how amazing everyone in this community just came together, and what a remarkably talented community we have, that just kind of everybody came out of the woodwork with different skills to lend to not just the construction and engineering, but to running this organization too, and all the work that we've done.
So it's a lot of them folks who actually live in the area, as opposed to I've talked to some recovery groups where it's a bunch of volunteers from some other state who come in for 3 weeks, and that's great, but they're not really tied down to the community at all.
Yeah, I mean that's for sure. Our entire board, and we're an all volunteer organization, so it's the board doing the work, right? And volunteering to do all the work that we're doing, and it's and every one of us lives here. I keep saying we're kind of. We've got sort of 1 foot squarely in each of being both the long-term recovery group for this area from this particular disaster, but also community action group, because I think there's things, certainly this has kind of illuminated for us that we could be a lot better prepared in the future. We just need to have a group like us kind of doing that work to get us there, and not just us, but also working hand in hand together with Mayor Abbey and town leadership, who's also just been incredible through all of this too. So that's, I think, having locals, and all locals board, you need that, right? Like you said, this isn't a 3-week job. This is, we're here for, for future generations, like that's kind of been one of the things we're starting to, as we're able to take a little bit more of a breath from some of the, obviously the immediate disasters a year behind us now, and sort of how do we make sure that, what we've put together here outlasts all of us too, and we keep this momentum going on all the future projects for town, and especially now that we're looking at mitigation and things like that for future disasters.
Yeah, what have been in the first 14 months or so the sort of big milestones of successes that Rebuild Hot Springs has been able to be involved in so far?
Well, I mean, we're that's a good question, because there's been a lot of I don't know. I sometimes look at some of the wins we've had as some of the wins I look at is just like, wow, look at who we've got just willing to be on part of this and volunteer all this time. Like those are some of the big wins for me, that we just have these people in our community is just amazing. But I think with some of the things we've been able to accomplish, for sure has been obviously the amount of money we've been able to raise for all the different programs that we've put together. We're hoping to hit $2 million by the end of this year that we've raised for the community, and that's been, we've done a lot for the volunteer fire department for the in terms of repairing some of the trucks immediately after the storm. We just raised another $10,000 for the volunteer. I'm also part of the volunteer fire department, so that one's like near and dear. But we've without the reports directly in front of me, I know we've done over $700,000 in relief for the businesses that were damaged. We just got another grant to help. It might push that number to probably in a similar ballpark with the residential home damage, where we've. I think it's probably somewhere around $600,000 or $700,000 that we've done for that group.
What do you see as sort of the next few steps as far as big picture needs, both for Rebuild Hot Springs to try to tackle, and then just the town in general trying to get from state, federal, other folks that may be involved in the continuing recovery?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we've still, like I said, we've accomplished a lot, but we're certainly not done. We still have a lot of money we need to raise for, especially if there's like a lot of, there are businesses and residents that are sort of trickier to qualify for. Like they didn't qualify for FEMA because, it was somebody was inherited that house when their mother passed away. They never went through the paperwork with the county to transfer to get their name on the deed. So it's someone who's not alive anymore whose name on the deed. These are things that just flat disqualify you from any help from FEMA. And FEMA's not enough for a lot. I mean, if a house is totally destroyed, there isn't even even if you're able to get the full amount you qualify for out of FEMA, it's not enough to build a house. So those are some of the areas where we're trying to come in and help with those, like with the kind of these really trickier situations. So again, it's, the big things we're still looking for is money to finish all these projects, but also making sure people are coming back to town. That's the big one right now, I think, is, making sure, this is very much a tourist economy here. It's always been, and that's the big push right now is like, how do we bring people back to town? The businesses are most of them are reopened at this point, but people need to be here.
Yeah, so you don't think, like this fall hasn't had the same tourism numbers as like a pre-storm level of
No.
traffic you see through town?
No, definitely not. And I think probably some of it is traffic's been a nightmare here. I think with all the problems of I-40, we are often a bypass. Usually it's especially the truck traffic, just flat ignoring. Don't drive this way. You've got to stay on the interstate and go up 26, and the GPS just tells them, now go through Hot Springs. So I think, we've got that, but I think, it's been, particularly this, summer and fall were a far cry from what it normally looks like here from business-wise.
And as far as residents, you have a sense for sort of how many of the folks who are here pre-storm have been able to move back in either temporarily or back into the homes they were in before?
Well, I know for sure what we're down to right now is about 14 homes that we're still trying to. We had, like I said, I think it was close to 40 when we started immediately after the flood. I think we've got about 14 right now that are still open projects essentially for us that we still need to raise that money for. There's, we still need to get contractors in doing the work and all those sorts of things. So those are the big projects still in front of us.
Yeah, and as far as sort of the stuff that the state or federal government's involved in, what are sort of the big asks that are out here from community leaders in Hot Springs for, outside assistance from the government?
That's a good question. I think, Mayor Abbey could definitely talk about that in a lot more detail. I know one of the big things for sure, though, is with the DOT and the bridge over Spring Creek. I know that's kind of a complicated, like a lot of these, it's easy to get all the easy things off the list, right? Now we're looking at the more challenging problems. So there's a bridge that goes through town that goes over Spring Creek. That bridge is largely, it exacerbated for sure the damage, because what happens is that bridge has multiple concrete pillars under it. Anytime we get a big rain, even in Spring Creek swells, it builds a dam of debris up against that bridge. And with flooding like this, it was. It took like an hour before we had a debris pile 30 feet high that probably went 50 feet up Spring Creek. It was, when you look at the flood map that FEMA puts together that then the county uses for the flood mapping, when you look at that map, it actually looks like there's a dam there, and it's because there kind of is.
Yeah.
And so the problem is, from DOT's point of view, and obviously they're buried in all kinds of other roadways, that were badly damaged in the flood. That one is still safe to drive a vehicle over, so it's not on DOT's list at all. But anytime we get a flood, that bridge makes the flooding significantly worse. It's a matter of millions of dollars of damage that having that bridge there. So what we're trying to get done is get a new bridge engineered that can sort of not be like a grate, essentially, like that's designed knowing that it's going to have that kind of debris coming at it. At least every few years we get not like what this flood was, but bad enough that we've got to get in there, get debris out of there, because it'll be worse if we don't. So we've got to get it engineered first, and then we've got to get it. We've got the DOT. We've got to get it into their queue, and that's probably a hard sell because vehicles can drive over it.
Yeah, they're not necessarily in the flood mitigation business for the most part.
Exactly, and then not just get it in their list, but then I think as we've gone farther in this project, we're learning kind of what that process looks like. It's not just getting in this; it can fall off of that list if they just deem it low enough priority. So it's going to be like lobbying them to keep it as a high priority and in the list and eventually get done. And so the town's working on that. have had some folks, we've had some engineers look at it that we've been able to bring in, and this is another one that, like all the projects, we have we sit down with the town at least once a week with, Mayor Abbey and the rest of the town leadership to kind of go over all these projects and, what's the town working on, what can we help with, but that bridge out of for sure out of the sort of, state or federal or anything like that, that's probably the one that I would say is probably the highest priority, because that's like the big swing we can take at mitigation of future disaster.
As far as the outdoor recreation resources in this area, has most of that been gotten back to where you can have river trips and people on the hiking trails, or are there still areas where trails are closed or the river is not quite in the right condition to run river trips?
No, that's actually, we had, it was really all of our, especially the raft guiding community. We've got a couple of raft guiding companies in this area that are amazing, and they were heavily involved in, just the day of rescue. That's our Swiftwater team with those guys, and so, the river's fully open, and the trail as well. We actually had probably what I would say was the most helpful thing that we had here out of the sort of federal or state government immediately after the flood was when the National Guard, 10 days in, the National Guard was here, and largely just like construction engineers, but they came in and just hauled debris, and they were humongously helpful, and they ended up going through and just with like a team of chainsaws, and they cleared not just the Appalachian Trail, but some of the other, more popular hiking trails that, again, we rely on for our tourism, our economy here. So, all of our trails are open.
Well, TJ Phillips is president of Rebuild Hot Springs. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, thank you for coming out.
Hot Springs wasn't the only community in Madison County that was hit hard during Helene. The county seat of Marshall was also flooded by the French Broad River, including the historic courthouse. Like Hot Springs, many of the downtown businesses in Marshall have reopened, but plenty of storefronts remain a work in progress, and government facilities are still in temporary spaces. To get a better sense for where the recovery process stands across Madison County, I stopped by the county manager's office. Rod Honeycutt is in his 4th year as the county manager here in Madison County. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Anytime we can highlight what's going on in Madison County, we appreciate it.
So we're now, 14 plus months out from Helene. What are some of the biggest milestones you've seen so far in Madison County in getting things back to normal?
So I remember one, just from a local government perspective, and I want to put this in boxes. So we lost our courthouse in downtown Madison County. We had just refurbished that courthouse, put about $1.2 million in it before the storm hit, and it washed down the river. So we are now in a temporary facility, thanks to FEMA and our federal government, about a $4 million facility that FEMA has funded. And to get back into normal operations, even in a temporary facility, is a good thing. We were operating out of like a gym, and we're now into actually a courtroom, courthouse.
It looks like a courtroom now.
So that's a big thing. We've seen parks come back, Barnard Park come back. So, a little bit of recreational. Our rodeo community is starting to come back and meet. But still, the infrastructure remains number one concern for the county and our municipalities. We lost courthouse, 2 town halls, 2 wastewater treatment plants, and a post office. The only thing that's come back so far in any type of permanency is that courthouse. Everybody else is still operating out of makeshift. So that's still, and those are a huge amount of dollars that we're talking about. FEMA, we meet with them every Monday or every other Monday. We go over this spreadsheet. I think there's 61 products, different worksheets we go over, and we find out the status. The money's there. It's just the process of getting to the money. It's slow. It was a generational storm. It's going to take us a generation to recover. We know that. But there's 17 steps to get to the money, and each one of those 17 steps has 3 or 4 things underneath it. And if you miss one, you go back to the beginning. A little bit of frustrating, but we've seen progress and we've seen their resiliency in the community come back together. Christmas parades, that's back to normal. Good Thanksgiving, good Veterans Day ceremonies in the county. Still a long way to go when it comes to infrastructure in the county government.
Yeah. So is there funding sort of committed from the federal levels for all those sort of replacement projects for infrastructure, and it's just a matter of how long it takes to get to where you can start construction?
Well, I won't say that the money's committed yet. I'm gonna say it's probably earmarked at the federal level, but not
in terms of two specific projects, it hasn't trickled down that far.
Well, let's take one of the wastewater treatment plants down in Marshall. I'm going to make up a number. Let's say that's a $10 million project. That $10 million project has to have architects, engineers, environmentals, land acquisition. That stuff don't happen overnight. They've committed to helping us, but we have to meet all these gates of getting all the procurement done, all the estimates done, all the environmental, all the architect, all the engineering steps in place before they're going to commit to the money. They say, yeah, we're going to help you, but you got to meet all these gates. It's just a slow process.
Yeah, so have you seen sort of the government projects maybe taking a little bit longer because of all those steps than when I was down in Hot Springs? One thing I noticed was that some of the businesses are back in the downtown, but the library and the town hall are still operating out of their temporary locations.
Well, if you are a larger county like my neighbors of Buncombe, they got a big county budget. I think theirs is $222 million with probably a large fund balance. We're a $34 million county with it's a strong fund balance, but it's a fund balance that's ratio for this county. So we could not fund a $10 million wastewater plant up front. We're held hostage to the federal money coming in.
Yeah, you have to wait for the check to arrive as opposed to spend the money and hope you get it back later.
Yeah, we would break ourselves. We'd go bankrupt. One specific is the waterway debris removal was $45 million. That bill alone would have wiped out the county's, day-to-day operation plus our fund balance. But I'm thankful that the state took over with the SMART program and took that burden off our back. But still, you've got some large bills out there that we can't, to replace the courthouse. It was one of the buildings we lost about $5 million just to build it back like it was. The Sprinkle Shelton building was our probation, pardon, parole, child support, IT department, drug counseling offices. That building is another $3.6 million building. We can't just replace those buildings out of our pockets. So we have to abide by the rules, which rules are a good thing because you don't want to waste taxpayers' dollars by not having checks and balances in place. But it's a slow process of getting to that money.
Yeah, for sure. What sort of additional help do you need from either state or federal levels? Is it just sort of speeding things up, or are there other things that are still sort of a question mark in how you get that done?
I think that with the Trump administration and what they're looking at, I'm on board with wholeheartedly redoing FEMA and pushing some of the federal responsibilities to the state. I think Western North Carolina, $19 billion or something like that. If we would have took $50 million and give $50 million to the 17 counties that were heard up front, called the 1750 plan, all 17 counties get $50 million, we could have been much further down the road with the direct disbursement. So the slow disbursement going from the federal level to the state, and the state breaks it down into departments, and then you have to go through the application process. Streamlining that process has got to happen. The Stafford Act, 1979, 1980, that brought FEMA. It's time to update that and come into the 21st century where we now have satellites and computers who can gather this information. We got to do better than that. The chokehold, that's probably a strong term saying chokehold, but there is a funnel in D.C. for anything over $100,000 automatically gets reviewed. That's too small for a natural disaster like this. We've got to open that aperture and enable the senior person on the ground from FEMA, the forward person, to have the authority to release that money instead of going back to D.C. There's too many levels of bureaucracy that we got to eliminate.
Yeah, so would it work better if either the state or the local sort of got once Congress establishes there's a need and there's a certain $1 billion that they can fund, that it gets out the door to the local or state governments faster?
I wasn't in the seat during ARPA, but in ARPA there was direct disbursements. It came straight from the federal government down to the counties. The counties were held reliable or held accountable for spending that money in the right way, in a manner that you did procurement correctly. I'm not sure if the trust was lost at that point or what happened, but we've got to get back to that where it comes straight to the counties and a direct disbursement.
Yeah. How are you looking in terms of sort of overall rebuilding for homes, businesses, other types of private facilities that have been damaged in the storm?
So business-wise, we're better than halfway now. 50-ish businesses in downtown Marshall. They've started to come back online. Christmas market this week. There's some larger businesses that are struggling. Post office-wise, that's our number one federal concern right now. Our neighbors who live in Madison County and Marshall specifically have to drive about 14 miles to go to a post office because we don't have one. That's a burden. So that, home-wise, we have a great long-term recovery group. We've got down to address level fidelity. We know where each of the homes are at, and we've seen every family taken care of. There's some families that have chosen not to rebuild in Madison County, and then we've got some families who are waiting on the state. We have 17 homes that are in the hazard mitigation grant program that we're waiting on the state to make a decision to buy those back. That has stalled. So there's 17 neighbors right now waiting on a decision from federal government of what they're going to do with their land.
Yeah.
That's kind of slow.
And are there folks that are wanting to get back, but maybe the either permitting or topography or finances just are not necessarily available to them?
That really don't apply to us right now. It's really inspections team. We've got more than enough capability and capacity. Now, I don't want to speak on individual homeowners and where they're at financially, because each one of them has a challenge with a financial institution, with FEMA. So I don't want to speak on their behalf, but for individual assistance, the county got about $8 million for citizens across the county. So, that was kind of a drop in the bucket, but it's got families back on their feet and getting started.
Yeah, how are things looking on the Parks and Recreation front as far as sort of outdoor recreation and other amenities that bring tourists and others into this area?
So we enjoy about 2,500 people a day on the French Broad River during tubing and rafting. This year we saw a little bit of a decline, but not a lot. And our one park, Barnard Park, is back operational. It actually looks better now than it probably has in years. About a $200,000 project. It was not large, but we now have a great access ramp into the French Broad River. We have some walking trails and some new benches. So that's going to come back. And I think that 2026, we'll be back where we're at, about 2,500 a day on the river. So that's huge.
Once you get past sort of some of the immediate recovery needs, are there sort of long-term projects that you'd like to see that to try to address future potential flooding issues with downtown Marshall or downtown Hot Springs or some of the other areas that took on water during this event and maybe had, in previous decades or centuries?
It's unfortunate. If you think about the French Broad River, it is a deep valley, and there's no way out of it. Mitigating the amount of water that's going to come through it, once in a generation storm, that's going to be a tough something to solve. We do have one dam that's in downtown Marshall that could be eliminated that may lower the amount of water that could come through. I think that's probably the single most thing. And then making sure that if we do rebuild back in some of these places, we build back with protective material and stuff that if it does get wet, if it does get flooded, it don't have to be torn down. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is putting that mitigation in place.
It came up this way about a year ago. One of the big hot topics was debris removal. Where does that stand? Have you gotten most of the issues with either debris that was potentially clogging up your rivers and waterways and that might be fuel for wildfires if you had a bad wildfire season?
So we had about 514 piles, is a technical term that was identified, and we've come a long way. Right now, we're looking at the 1st of March of being complete, of having all the debris out of the waterways. Debris Tech and SDR are the two contractors. We didn't choose to go with the Army Corps of Engineers. We went with the private contractor. They've been very good stewards. Now, they've made a couple of mistakes, but they have corrected those mistakes. And where our streams are narrow, they've not put equipment into the streams. They went down and took it out by hand. and we appreciate the diligence and paying attention of being good stewards of our environment. But we're well on track. This year we had a little bit of a dry spell. So we took the contractors that were working the river and the U.S. Forest Service and the North Carolina Forest Service, asked if they go into on land to help us with some of the forest fire and move some of that debris out of the way. But they've now completed that and back in the river. I think by 1 March we're going to meet that goal and they'll be done.
Rod Honeycutt is the county manager here in Madison County. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Main Street NC is a production of WUNC News. The podcast is edited by Dave DeWitt. You can see photos of Hot Springs and its recovery at our website, WUNC.org. I'm Colin Campbell. Thanks for listening.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious, because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.